Hi. I'm weak. As charismatic, hot, sexy, intelligent, and most importantly, handsome as my content creator personality is, my off-screen self is pretty much none of these traits. Maybe intelligent, but that one's arguably a bit of a stretch. Point is, even though my 20 minutes of anime video wisdom might seem like I'm in perpetual post-nut clarity, most of the time, it's not like that. At least, I don't feel that way. Maybe it's because I don't go outside unless it's either an obligatory responsibility or to buy food. Maybe it's because I compare myself too much to people who I think are better than me. Maybe it's because I set high expectations but haven't sorted out the deeper insecurities within me that are holding me back. Maybe it's a combination of all these three. Who knows? And as much as I love a good self-pity party once in a while, constantly drowning yourself in your sorrows is the equivalent of being a horrible 2017 prank YouTuber. It's embarrassing, attention-seeking, and only weird people want to watch. So instead, to become a stronger and better person, I rigorously binged anime alone in my dark bedroom again. I should probably start with going outside more. Like, I don't know, go on a hike by myself, or a journey. From Sousou no Frieren, also called Frieren, Beyond Journey's End, is a story about an elf mage Frieren recollecting her experiences of vanquishing the demon lord. After departing from her former comrades, Frieren reconnects with them right before they die. Because she's an apathetic, long-living elf, Frieren didn't understand at the time that although their adventure was only 10 years out of the hundreds she lived, it was one of the most defining decades in her entire life. With this newfound realization, she seeks to reignite these previous memories to give them the appreciation and respect that her past self didn't. On her journey, Frieren picks up a mage apprentice, Fern, by the request of one of her previous party members. Going along their bizarre adventure, Frieren, enticed by all the shiny, rare valuables, wants to loot a dragon's nest. Dragons are cautiously perceptive, dangerously territorial, and notoriously strong though, so the only way to cop a steal is to remove the dragon from the nest entirely, aka magic missile. Fern fails to eliminate the dragon in one shot, to which the elf immediately starts booking it because, you know, you don't exactly have time to cast magic missile when the fantasy equivalent of a pitbull named Precious is coming after you. With that sorry attempt, they realize that they don't have a frontliner in the party to draw the attention of the beast, so Frieren recruits the recommended student from another one of her previous party mates. This is Stark. He's strong, personable, friendly, and most importantly, a coward. Despite his immense strength and rigorous training, Stark is inexperienced as an adventurer, not really putting his work into practice. Frieren and Fern meet up with him at a village where he's playing with the village children, and they ask him to join their crew. Stark agrees on the condition that they defeat a dragon that's been terrorizing the village, the same one that the elf mage wants to loot from. He admits to valiantly trying to make a stand against it all by himself, only to feel an overwhelming sense of fear paralyzing him. With neither side making a move, the dragon flew off and spared Stark on a whim, but since he coincidentally showed up before it stopped wreaking havoc, the village began praising him as a hero, showing their appreciation in a rudimentary fashion with good food and encouragement. Since the people are so nice to him, Stark wants to stay at the village, not because he's getting his ego stroked, but because he understands that his presence gives them peace of mind. While it might seem like he's taking advantage of the village's kindness, Stark is not a hateable guy. He knows more than anyone that he's faking being a hero. Stark doesn't gloat about how amazing he is, telling exaggerated stories of his feats or abusing his heightened status to satisfy any greedy cravings. He's just a guy who showed up at the right place at the right time, and with the dragon being nearby, Stark wants to maintain the happiness of the people who are kind to him. So he continues to stay at the village to put the people at ease, causing this massive lie to tie him down. He tried being a hero, failed, and still chooses to burden himself with the heavy responsibility of keeping up the act. Stark cares about the others around him, so much so that he's willing to maintain this lie to preserve their happiness. Ironically, being the only person part of the vanguard, Stark really doesn't want to fight the dragon, and he's pretty honest with Frieren and Fern about how badly he doesn't want to do this. Fern is reasonably disgusted. What good is a frontliner if they don't even have the courage to do their job? On the other hand, Frieren, with her centuries of experience, already knows he's capable. The next morning, Frieren, Fern, and Stark meet up at the dragon's nest to defeat it. Frieren promises Stark that if he can keep the dragon busy for half a minute, she'll be able to swiftly take care of the rest. Before the fight, Fern notices that his hands are trembling, exactly like his mentor's. And just like Stark's mentor, Stark confronts the beast even though he's scared. He puts all his training into practice, reading and dodging all of its attacks, finally mounting the creature and dealing a heavy blow to its snout. After all that build-up, Stark anxiously yells at Frieren and Fern to help him out, saying that he held up his end of the deal, stalling the dragon out for half a minute. But the mages just stand there and do nothing. Frieren tells him that he killed it, and Stark stares at the corpse, shocked by his own capabilities. He became a real hero. While it was obvious to Frieren that the only thing Stark lacked was confidence, he was doubtful of his own strength to the point where he had to inadvertently be tricked in order to understand how powerful he really was. If Frieren and Fern hadn't shown up, Stark would be stuck at the village forever in a stalemate against the dragon, only because he didn't believe he was strong enough. Stark is a coward. I hate the coward character archetype in a lot of animes because of how obnoxiously inept they are while simultaneously somehow being the most knowledgeable person in the team, yapping about whatever strengths the enemy has to hype up and inadvertently glaze the antagonist. However, Stark is my favorite character in Frieren. He's actually competent, and not just there to act as a foil character to a main protagonist that emanates aloof ignorance. And this difference changes his entire headspace. Instead of being a useless party member who can't wrap it up and handle their own, Stark's biggest fights are with his own confidence. Once you get him going though, he becomes an unstoppable force. In that fight with the dragon, what Stark was missing was not capability. He's plenty strong. He just needed a memory to prove it to himself. On top of his race's culture immortalizing a warrior's pride, Stark's past is defined by him running away at key moments, something he thinks only cowards and weak people do. But to an outsider with centuries of experience like Frieren, she knows that he's capable. Dragons don't randomly stop attacking villages near their nests. Stark prevented the towns from being razed by simply existing. The dragon specifically wanted to avoid a fight with Stark because it knew how powerful he was, even though Stark himself was unaware, and this proves that he was never faking being a hero the entire time. While it is a fantasy anime with immense world building and heavy themes, Sousou no Frieren is filled with small moments and interactions that make the characters feel more real than doing something larger than life every episode. As a slow and steady show, it's incredibly introspective and amazingly screw it. The story is popular enough that you probably don't need me to sing the same praises everyone else has been saying. I should just go outside. And this is absolute proof that I have touched grass. And now I can stop. What the hell is that? What are you doing? Uh-huh. Well, it is a nice day today. Can't blame you for wanting to go outside. Yeah, me too, but I didn't think that far ahead. Lemonade would be great right now, though. Ice cold, like ice skating. From Medalist, the absolute undisputable hidden gem of winter 2025 anime about ice skating. I've seen many shows with studios that are either lazy or simply don't have the budget and time to respect the many fine details of a hobby. So when I saw these performances happening in the early episodes, I became absolutely captivated. Even as a viewer with no figure skating knowledge, other than that it makes men want to kiss each other for some reason, you can tell the staff did their research with planned choreography behind these displays. Like, god damn, look at the cinematography and animation. Sure, it's CG, but it still captures the sparkly elegance and suave charisma of the essence of ice skating. Enough of me glazing the performances though. This is Tsukasa Akeodashi, a 26-year-old ice skating coach. While pros and prodigies begin early in their careers, usually at the age of an elementary schooler, it really makes you feel better about yourself when these 5-year-old puntable children are nailing techniques levels above you, Tsukasa only became invested in ice skating starting in high school. However, despite his immense passion for the sport, his unfortunate circumstances only meant that the gap between him and the people he looked up to was insurmountably massive, and so he ultimately gave up on his dream of becoming a professional figure skater. Being borderline broke, Tsukasa got hired as an assistant coach, encountering the 5th grader Inori Yuitsuka. She aspires to be a figure skater like her older sister, but because an injury put her sister out of the sport, Inori's protective mother doesn't want her second child to go down the same dangerous path. Inori, however, probably couldn't be any more miserable for her age. With no friends at school, poor grades, and a mother who forbids her from partaking in the hobby she enjoys, the only way she's able to find any sort of comfort is by bribing the front of house at the skating rink to let her in exchange for the worms she digs up. Inori is caught by Tsukasa, advising her that she can't keep going on like this and she needs to resolve the issues with her mother first. Inori winds up coming to the club with her mom, who only brought her there to get the coaches to reject her. To make it even worse, Inori is a 5th grader, which, you'd think that'd be an early enough age to get a pretty decent head start. No. These kids have been skating since they were 5. Look at them. Their form is already this good. You are years behind. Ouch. Tsukasa, not wanting to give up yet, gets the bright idea of examining Inori's technique. For a self-taught beginner, she has the basics down to a T, yet despite the silver lining, her mother still adamantly refuses. Even though it seems like a classic parent is being unreasonable and won't listen to their child moment, the mother knows all too well the sacrifices that are made when a child pursues a potential lifelong journey like this. It's a massive time and money commitment, especially in Inori's sister's case where she had an injury and couldn't continue skating anymore. To give up so much effort for nothing only turns you bitter and regretful, wishing you could have been doing smaller things instead that make you more happy. While she is definitely overprotective, the mother isn't doing this out of bad faith. She just wants Inori to find something else that makes her happy that isn't as risky as ice skating. However, acknowledging the risks, Inori still wants to skate. She knows it's not easy, that people quit, that it's a burden on her parents, that her teachers are worried about her, that she's not good at anything. But because of all these reasons, Inori wants to become better at skating because she doesn't want to be embarrassed of herself. Tsukasa's reminded of when he had the burning passion for becoming a professional skater. He wonders what he needed the most that would have prevented him from giving up his own dream. Tsukasa, realizing what he missed, ardently declares he will coach Inori himself. He believes she will be a great skater one day, so good she'll be able to qualify for the national championship. With such an impassioned speech, the mother had no choice but to concede to the offer. The overarching question in the first couple of episodes of this anime is, why should you even try when all your efforts are at risk of being invalidated? Inori's older sister put countless hours into skating starting when she was 5, only for an injury to prevent her from continuing the sport. Tsukasa wanted to get into skating in high school, which, to put into perspective, a professional who picked it up at the age of 5 would have an entire decade's worth of experience before Tsukasa put his first skates on. Even Inori, a 5th grader, would still be behind by half a decade compared to the child prodigies. I'm sure a lot of people in Inori's position would compare themselves to the early starters, see the massive skill gap, and feel defeated, understandably giving up. Yet Inori's speech focuses on the most important fundamental reason to start. She wants to figure skate because she wants to believe in herself. Tsukasa was once in the exact same position of having that drive, but being a late starter. In that moment when Inori declared she wanted to not be embarrassed of herself, he understood what Inori needed the most. Guidance. Not just for figure skating, but someone who can inspire, motivate, and push Inori to even greater heights. Tsukasa, with his late starting and limited funding, never had the opportunity to get a mentor like that. He was turned away from every club he went to, had to pay for his own equipment himself, and didn't have a personal coach until he was 20, who didn't even teach figure skating, by the way. Tsukasa was just so desperate to improve, he accepted lessons on the condition that he had to be an ice dancer. All of these led to his dream slowly fizzling out. With that rocky of a journey, it's a miracle he still even keeps skating skating instead of retiring and pursuing something else. Both Tsukasa and Inori are familiar with the feeling of that intense desire to achieve something great, accompanied by the simultaneously loneliness of having to do everything yourself because you can't find support. However, with Tsukasa's experience, he's able to lift Inori to places he previously couldn't reach. It's nice that Inori found a compatible coach, but remember, she's still a newbie. Out of the 8 levels of Japanese figure skating, she isn't even level 1. And even though her mother did agree to her skating, she's still limiting Inori to skating until middle school. If you're wondering like me how the Japanese grade system works, middle school is grades 7 through 9, so Inori would have the rest of her 5th grade year and the entirety of 6th grade to enjoy skating before she would be forced to quit. Inori obviously doesn't want to quit, so Tsukasa proposes that she enters a competition to impress her mother. They prepare for the competition, honing Inori's fundamentals and practicing new techniques. The day comes, and when it's time for Inori to warm up on the rink, she goes for an axel and falls. Alright, no biggie, maybe the pressure's getting to her, first competition, but that's what warm-up is for, just calm your nerves and... okay. It's bleak, gang. Thankfully, she's not the first to go up in her group, so she can practice on the mats a bit before going out on the ice, but not being able to land the axle even once is definitely worrying. Speaking of worried, seeing that failure of a warm-up before Inori performs, her mother asks Coach Tsukasa to make her daughter's repertoire easier. She doesn't want Inori to have bad memories of figure skating, especially when she's going to quit soon and it's the only activity that's supposed to make her happy. Tsukasa wants to defend Inori's aspirations, but understands his place. At the end of the day, he is only her coach. He can't speak for her. Inori, eavesdropping on both of them, chastises herself for being unable to change. Then, after seeing herself in a mirror with her figure skating outfit, she realizes she's not the same person she was before. She's wearing a dress and ice skates and competing in a competition in front of an audience. Inori is the figure skater she's always dreamed of being. She declares in front of her mother that she wants to keep her repertoire and ultimately become an athlete her mother can be proud of. Inori remembers what inspired her to start skating. It wasn't the cool tricks or sparkly outfits themselves that made figure skating captivating. It was the person, her sister. With an intense amount of conviction, Inori starts her journey the same way her heroes did. Inori is up on the rink, and her program starts out shaky. She goes for the first axel and falls, but my girl immediately gets back up to continue with a big smile as if nothing ever happened. She nails the rest of her performance, gracefully and effortlessly landing the lutz and second axel, all the while enjoying every second of being on stage. For her final trick, Inori does a flying sit spin, but with a little too much speed, turning it into a broken leg sit spin. By the way, I have no idea how hard these techniques are, but the performance itself was super hype. Inori finishes her program with a score of 12.64, earning her first place in the competition. The anxiety right before Inori's program was at an all-time high, and despite the mother being overprotective again, wanting to lower the bar on Inori's performance, it comes from an understandable sentiment of not wanting to see your child be dejected. Performing in front of an audience is no easy feat, and especially with Inori's age, if she screws up, it'll have a huge impact on her self-image in the future. Inori already complained about her life sucking, and if she didn't enjoy figure skating anymore, she would have nothing to make herself happy. The mother might seem overbearing, but she has solid reasoning for her proposed decision. Tsukasa, on the other hand, can intuitively feel Inori wouldn't want this to happen though, preventing him from immediately agreeing with the mom. But at the same time, he can't say too much, otherwise he'd be forcing his will onto Inori, which is why it was so important for her to speak up for herself. She needed to reaffirm her convictions and make her own decisions. Inori didn't want an easier program because ice skating is supposed to be a way for her to believe in herself. With her earnest personality, even if she nailed all the techniques with a lowered bar, she wouldn't be proud of herself, defeating the entire purpose of skating. Inori's self-esteem seemed to just flip out of nowhere, but it was her epiphany that ignited it, literally and metaphorically seeing herself in a new light. When people get into hobbies, or really anything in general, it's pretty much a given they always have some sort of person they look up to. In this scene, Medalist hits the nail right on the the head, pinpointing exactly what excites people to pursue a goal. It's not the techniques or tricks that make things inspiring. At the end of the day, a finely tuned robot or AI could perform the same skills as any person. It's the people and stories behind these experiences that motivates onlookers and listeners. And when Inori comes to the realization she's becoming one of these pioneers, writing her own story the way her idols did, it fills her with confidence. In one of the later episodes, Inori is having trouble with a double salto, and Tsukasa is having trouble teaching it to her. They meet with Yudai and Emma, a coach and student pair respectively from the Rengetcha FSC. Because Tsukasa doesn't have much experience in single skating and Rengetcha FSC is the strongest club in Japan, he tries hosting a duo coaching session with Yudai to learn some tips on how to teach skating better. First off, Inori shows her skill set. Yudai asks what Tsukasa thinks, to which bro yaps about the fine details of skating that go right over my head, and Yudai, with all his coaching knowledge coming from the #1 figure skating club in Japan, just agrees, not adding much. Emma then shows off her practice, and Tsukasa nerds out again, to which Yudai is impressed with his ability to closely observe and diagnose problems with one look, remarking even he wouldn't have been able to do that. All of this confuses Tsukasa. He wanted to learn some secret teaching technique that would make Inori improve 1,000,000 times faster, but the thing he's looking for doesn't exist. There is no hidden art to coaching. With his drive, Tsukasa's talents are more than enough to supplement his student. The situation gets a bit awkward as Tsukasa was basically tweaking over nothing. It's clear he is super anxious about whether he was being the best coach he could be for Inori, which comes from a good place, but his insecurity of not being good enough was damaging his mental, and this stress can wind up negatively affecting his student too. Remember, Tsukasa was taught ice dancing, not figure skating, and even though they share a lot of the same fundamentals, they are still different categories, meaning they require different skill sets. Tsukasa, being proficient and knowledgeable, knows his own blind spot when it comes to ice skating, and understands that there is a difference between the way you teach these two things. And because his past was filled with his own dreams getting slowly smothered, he assumed these distinctions would make him a bad coach. Yet Yudai's absence of criticism essentially proves that Tsukasa's teaching methods are exceptional, with the only thing lacking from him being confidence. If you're anyone like me, you like to remind yourself that you are not worth much, and while this mindset helps your humility and cautiousness, constantly putting yourself down is not exactly a fun spot to be in. This bottled up anxiety can often wind up resulting in rash, unnecessary, or detrimental decision making because your perceptions are so warped, or freeze you in time because you don't feel competent enough to face your fears. Long term, you start missing out on greater opportunities simply because you don't think you're worthy enough, and this in turn suppresses your self-esteem even more. It's a terrible feedback loop to be stuck in, watching your aspirations slowly fade away. Confidence is a feeling I wish I had more of, and even though I can logically prove my achievements are impressive and that I should be proud of myself for accomplishing X, Y, and Z, I don't feel it. In fact, knowing that I'm capable but not understanding it makes my self-hatred worse because of the discrepancy between my emotions and my logic. Going for higher achievements doesn't solve this either because whenever I do something that warrants praise, it's never good enough. However, despite knowing people have done the same things I've done with way more expertise and less effort, this fact doesn't invalidate how I can still look back on a few things that I've done that I'm personally proud of. And this means the results of what I did never mattered in the first place, which means the only thing left there is my passion and effort to accomplish those goals. The way Medalist defines confidence is the ability to repeatedly trust yourself over and over again. And when I look back on my proudest moments, the continuity between these memories remains to be my drive to continuously improve. So whenever I feel like I'm not competent enough, I can at least be able to put my faith in the ever-growing series of past selves that are driven to be a better person. Anyways, that's about it for this video. Thanks for your attention span.